morning, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday's lesson. It's Mrs. Morton here. Please could you write down the date and title and underline them in your homework book. Thank you. Now today's lesson is approaching question 2, looking at how you summarise. The learning objectives are, by the end of the lesson, you will be able to define the key features of a summary and summarise the main ideas in one extract. You know what the pen and icon mean. You also know I may forget to put them on a slide, but I will always tell you what to write down. The key word for today is the word synthesize, which means to bring together information from different sources. It's a skill we will be using today. Please could you pause the video and write this in your homework books. Thank you. So, question 2, the summary. What does the question look like? Let's remind you. You need to refer to both source A and source B for this question. The sources will be about a page long. In this case, both sources describe the types of board used for surfing. You will always be told what the sources are about. And it will always tell you to use details, which means quotations and inferences, from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the different boards used by the surfers. So, it might ask for similarities or differences, and it will always give you a focus to compare. What exactly is a summary? Let's check you fully understand. A summary is a brief statement which gives the main point of something. When you summarise something, you give a brief statement about the main points and ideas from it. Some examples for you are telling someone the plot of a film or book, catching your friend up on what you learnt the day they missed a lesson due to illness. Please could you copy out the definition here, summary equals a brief statement, and these examples. Then, could you please try to write your own example of something you could give a summary of? For example, a plot or a movie or a book that you've read recently in 2 sentences. That's it. So summarise something for number 2 in 2 sentences. Thank you. Let's move on. Question 2, what to expect. It is 8 marks. You need to spend 8 to 10 minutes on it. The ideas from this will help you to answer question 4, where you will have to compare writers' perspectives and viewpoints. And you do not need to do any language analysis. Oh, the joy. AQA have told us in their reports that the ability to infer and to make connections, so comparisons, is the key to success. No language analysis needed. Students should be prepared to respond to the precise focus of the task. In the previous question, the focus was on the boards surfers use. And the question will always be content-based, and it will be likely to be narrow. So it will ask you something specific, hence the boards the surfers use. It's very specific. So, as I've said here, I'm not going to repeat the word again, it tells you, you don't just need to summarise, you must also use quotations to support your points, and you must use inference. So from your quote, you infer. In a summary, you do not need to analyse language, but you will be tested on your ability to handle explicit and implicit information. We looked at those yesterday. Explicit means obvious, clear, detailed information. Implicit is less obvious. You often have to read between the lines or use clues. So what makes an effective summary? You follow the order of the points in the text being summarised. So if it's an article about surfboards and you're looking specifically at how the boards are made, you wouldn't select a piece of information from the end of the source, then the middle, then the beginning. You choose your information chronologically, beginning, middle, end. You only mention the key information. You keep your quotations short. You make inferences. You do not copy out the original text. You write in paragraphs. You do not analyse anything to do with language. Please could you write down these points. Lovely, let's move on. How to write a summary. Now you'll probably sit there thinking, oh my goodness, summarising is easy, I could do it blindfolded, standing on my head. Well, I thought that too when I first ever saw this exam paper. But actually, there's a technique you need to follow to get the 8 marks. And it's called the SQUID technique. So a bit like the old-fashioned PEE, point, evidence, explain, we use SQUID to help you remember how to answer. So when you have your question, you make a statement, you provide a quote, you infer, then you reference a difference using a connective. That sounds a little confusing, but you will understand when you see it in practice. So let's show you some more detail. You make a statement which answers the question, keep your quotes short, then you infer about the quotation. What is the writer hinting at or suggesting? Then, because you're summarising and comparing, you need to use a comparative connective to connect the two texts together to say the difference or the similarity. Please could you write this down? Not the nice simple box here, this information here please, the full sentences. Please pause your video and do that now. Thank you. How many of you drew a little squid? I bet at least 5 of you drew a squid to help you remember, and that's absolutely fine. It's a good way to remember, drawing images to help you remember key ideas. Squidding is the way we answer question 2, paper 2. Now, before we get into looking at extracts, we're going to, in fact, look at pictures first, just to ease you in. Like we did with paper 1, when I taught you how to answer the structure question, we watched movie trailers. We're going to look at images first, just like I said, to help you understand how you summarise 2 different sources. So you're going to see this screen, and I'm going to do the first one for you. So in a moment, you're going to see 2 different pictures, picture A and picture B, and they show different scenes. We're going to look at the 2 pictures and think about the differences, and then with you, I'm going to write out the end of these sentences. So I'm going to complete them, mentioning the differences in the pictures. It'll be easy for you to follow along, because the first one, I'm going to do it for you, and you're going to write as I type, and then for the second set of pictures, you will do it on your own. Let's show you these images. So here, fun little spot the difference task. You have picture A, or the Marvel heroes, and picture B, Superman, looking slightly lonely and isolated. Please could you, in your books, jot down 3 differences between these images. 3 differences. Oh, sorry, I thought my pen and icon for pause were going to come up then. Please could you pause the video now? Brilliant, you should have written down at least 3 differences. Now, in the action exam, these images would not be images, they would be sources, whole pages of writing for you to compare. But to teach you how to do this first, we're using pictures. And I'm going to show you how you'd used SQUID. So I'm going to minimise my screen slightly, and I'm going to type my answers, and I need you to write them with me. So you'll also hear me speaking aloud to myself. So in source A, the superheroes in the image are united. They are a collective. Now, where it says the evidence, that would actually be a quotation you would use from the extract. We don't have words in our pictures, so I've just used the word evidence instead, which acts in the same way as a quote does to support myself. So here's my evidence. It would be a quote with the extract, but I'm using evidence instead. And now I need to use my inference. What can I infer? Now I've inferred that because they're stood in a group, that they perhaps care for one another and work as a team. Now I've got my connective here, my comparison connective. However, the superhero in source B he is alone and isolated. Vicinity means area. Now I've got to infer. What can I tell about the fact that he's standing in a bleak, dim, miserable setting with no one around? Here's my inference. Maybe he's been alienated, pushed away by other superheroes, or perhaps he's even turned to the dark side and is venturing out alone. If you'd like to pause your video now, please do, because you need to write this down. And then when you're ready, you're going to have a go at doing this on your own with 2 new images. Pause the video now if you need to. Right, here are the 2 images you're going to do on your own. You have 2 Christmas meal scenes. One, a jolly, happy, lightly lit up room with a merry family. And the contrasting scene depicts an old man dressed in his best with his fairy lights and tree, eating entirely alone. Start by just summarising 3 differences that you can see to warm yourself up. And then, if you need to, pause the video, because then we're going to look at the scaffolding to help you, my sentence starters. Pause the video now if you need more time to write down your differences. Here are your scaffolded sentence starters. Spend 5 minutes on this, please. In source A, the people in the image are. The evidence is, so describe what you see. From this we can infer that. However, etc., etc. Please ignore these quotation marks. They should not be there. 5 minutes on this, please, and then we'll move on. Please pause your video now. Brilliant. Hopefully you've managed to say something about the differences in these 2 scenes, and we can move on. Now, I'm going to show you a demonstration or a model of what this would look like with an actual extract from an exam paper. So here's an example of a few paragraphs from an exam paper extract. Now remember, the extract will be about a page long at least, so any reading you're doing at home at the moment is going to benefit you hugely. So first we'll begin by reading the extract. Now, you might need to understand Extinction Rebellion was a march against global warming, climate change and trying to protect our planet. So some students took time off school to support Greta Thunberg with marching in London about protecting our planet. This is written by a man called Jeremy Clarkson. We need to understand his feelings about the Extinction Rebellion striking children. Striking is not hitting out at someone, it's when you refuse to go to work or school because you feel strongly about something, and it's like a march. Today, thousands of mums and dads will climb into their Volvos and drive to London to pick up their Extinction Rebellion kids, who've spent the past 2 weeks at a fancy dress street party. I was in the centre of the capital being the centre of London, last night, and God, it was annoying. The police had a noisy helicopter hovering overhead, streets were closed, and everywhere you looked, there were people saying, "Oh look, you've come as a broccoli. What do you think of my Grim Reaper suit?" Like almost all sensible adults, I'll be glad to see the back of them. But I fear our relief will be short-lived, which means temporary, because when the weather improves, we can be certain they'll be back. So what he's saying here is that these children who are meant to be marching to try and support global climate, to support how we can get the government to help our planet with sorting out recycling and climate change, you probably know more than I do. He's in fact saying it just seemed to be a giant fancy dress street party. The children were not taking it seriously at all. So if we were to summarise his feelings, remember in the real thing we've got to do a comparison, so we'd have another extract to compare to. But for now, we're breaking you in gently. You just need to summarise these two extracts. See what I've written here. Now for some of you, I know you don't like having different colours on the screen and it can actually not really support your learning. So on this next slide, which you can fast forward to because I'm moving to it now, you will see I've removed any colours just in case that doesn't support your learning. I'm going to return to this slide though, but you have that one available to you. In fact, I'll leave it for another moment in case you want to pause. So if anyone needs to pause the video without the colours, here it is. I'm returning back to the colourful slide now. Now I've used colours here to try and show you where squid comes in. We don't have the D of squid because we've got nothing to compare it to yet. Like I said, we're just breaking you in gently with one paragraph. Here we go. So you begin with a statement. It is clear that Clarkson is strongly against children attending Extinction Rebellion events. Simple viewpoint, like we practiced yesterday, a statement, a fact. He calls them annoying and refers to the helicopter as noisy. So now you're supporting the fact that you think he sees children going to Extinction Rebellion events as silly, because you have the evidence here taken from his extract. Now you have your inference. He suggests that he finds the strikes extremely inconvenient and almost makes a mockery of them when he states that, like almost all sensible adults, I'll be glad to see the back of them. So you've got an inference here. You have inferred, guessed at what he feels like from his quotations. So an inference is a bit of guesswork from clues in the text. Now with this paragraph, you can go statement QI. So I've had an inference and I've added another quotation to support myself. And then I'm back to inference again. So with his quotation, like almost all sensible adults, I'll be glad to see the back of them, I've inferred again. So here he generalises the view he hopes all adults will have and implies being against the events is natural and the right way to feel. So again, I have inferred what he thinks and feels. I have had a guess using clues from his quote. Like almost all sensible adults, he's generalising what he thinks all adults will feel. Please could you pause your video now and you're going to write down this model paragraph. If you've got some different colours, it will be very useful to use them now to divide up where the S, Q and I are. And then you're going to write your own summary of Clarkson's feelings. So you'll need to choose your own quotation. A nice one you could select are, it's as though they've been at a fancy dress street party all week, and write a statement, what does he think of that, and then talk about the quote. You are not analysing it, you are inferring. So if he thinks they've been acting like they've been at a fancy dress street party, what can you infer about his attitude towards this rebellion? No language analysis, it's inference, like you have modelled to you here. What does it reveal? Please could you pause the video now, write the model paragraph and have a go at making your own. Here's the one available if you needed one that did not have colour. And last but not least, this time you'll do this entirely on your own. You've got an article called Brighton Shock. Brighton is a place on the coast. You need to read the extract written by a teacher about a trip to Brighton. Brighton is a seaside town. Then you're going to write a summary of Chris's thoughts, Chris being the teacher, and his feelings about the trip to Brighton. You should write 1 to 2 SQI paragraphs. Statement, quote, inference. There's no squiddy, the D for squid, because we're not doing a comparison yet. You do not need to use these sentence starters if you don't want to, but they're there if they could be helpful. And for those of you who have a reader, I'm going to read this to you. Pause if you don't want to hear me reading. Brighton shock. The last week of the summer term inevitably came, and with it the dreaded day trip to celebrate the culmination, the ending of the academic year. I always had bad dreams at this time of year of meetings of parents to tell them of the gruesome end at which their teenage progeny had predictably arrived. Drowning, dismemberment, so losing an arm or a leg, or simple disappearance. My imagined disaster scenarios were infinite. So this teacher has nightmares about taking children away at the end of term. He always fears something terrible is going to happen to them. This particular group of teenagers seemed more than happy to be on their way to their inevitable and possibly collective demise. Collective demise means they all might die. Having somewhat lazily chosen the same destination as last year, they laughed and joked as the double-decker bus made its lethargic, slow way towards the coast. All except Chris. He kept looking glumly down, staring at his trainers and asking at regular intervals, and in a voice so despairing, one could easily imagine his family must have recently been eaten by crocodiles, why the class had to visit Brighton yet again. So you need to read the extract written by a teacher, then write a summary of Chris's thoughts and feelings about the trip to Brighton. You should write 1 to 2 SQI paragraphs. Please pause your video and do that now. Right, ladies and gents, we've come to the end of the lesson. Hopefully you were successful and you were able to email me. In fact, if you can, I'd love it to see your emailed work of how you managed to write your own SQI about Chris and how he feels about the trip. And you should now be able to define the key features of a summary, and you should be able to summarise the main ideas in one extract. I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day.